Because honestly, we believe this. Everything does rise and fall on leaders. We need leaders in our... Hey, we've got something going on in the world right now for a new leader in our nation because... How do I say this? Maybe I shouldn't say it because it sounds too political. Because the last guy, if that's what a leader is like, forget it. And I'm not talking politics. I'm talking about integrity. I'm talking about honesty as well as skills. So we have a leadership dearth, and we honestly believe that leadership isn't the most important gift. It's just that when the tide of leadership rises, every other gift rises as well. So all the boats rise when the tide comes in. Same with leadership. All the other gifts will be released if a leader is functioning, doing well in what they should be doing. And we're not just talking church leadership. We want to produce leaders in every strata of life, every area. Angie and I are the Mayor's chaplain this year, partly because the Mayor's in the church here, in case you don't know. But we've been able to go in and speak to the city council. And we were there this week talking to them about servanthood. We need servant leaders in our nation, in every area, in councils, in government, in science, in education, in the church. And we said, we want to start an academy to develop leaders. As soon as I mention leaders, some of you have switched off. Some of you online, because you've gone like this. Oh, click. I'm not a leader, so the academy isn't for me. Wrong! If you're a human being made in the image and likeness of God, you have a mandate from heaven. You have a purpose for living. It goes right back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. This is your mandate. Rule and subdue. God created us in his image and in his likeness. Nothing else was created like God. And then he told us, go and rule as his vice regents, as those that are ruling on his behalf. See, I think, this is just a thought of mine, I wouldn't die for this. I think God said at the end of creation, it's very good, because that's what he says in Genesis 1. He didn't say it's perfect, because there's still stuff to be done, and we are those that are meant to carry it on. So we made nothing else, no one else other than human beings are made in the image and likeness of God. And we are to go into all the world and to rule and subdue. Use modern day words. Cultivate and innovate. That's what we're meant to do. You're meant to be in your world, whatever your world is. It could be in the military. It could be in software. It could be in education. It could be in the home. It could be in gardening. That's part of ruling and subduing. Innovate and cultivate. Innovate and cultivate. The word that we gave to the academy students last night was this word as they go into this next season. Flourish. Go on, flourish. Wherever you go. So don't rule yourself. Don't point, it's rude, my dad used to say. Don't rule yourself out. And say, well, I'm not a leader. Yes, I mean, that's true of every human being that can have influence. How much more of a human being that's given their life to Christ? See, too many Christians have stepped out of leadership and influence roles and left it to others, and then we complain that there's a hole and there's a vacuum and others are leading without a knowledge of God and understanding of his ways. Step into it. Step into it. When God created us, he gave us an earthly vocation. There's a lot of theology around this. I can't go into it about, if you look it up, it's called Imago Dei. That is made in the image and likeness of God. That's what we're meant to be and to lead our world wherever we go. Image bearers into all the world. I finish with this. John Calvin, in one of his institutes of the Christian religion, wrote this. The knowledge of God and that of ourselves are connected. Without knowledge of self, there's no knowledge of God. Without knowledge of God, there is no knowledge of self. And one of the things we want to do on academies, we want you to help you understand yourself better. We do a lot of this through Life Thrive, which my wife is an expert on. If someone asked me the other day, what have you learnt most from your wife in your leadership journey? You know what my answer was in that? That the more I understand myself, the better leader I can be. She's been on at me to understand. Why do you react like that? What is it? And one thing we do when we do academies, help you understand yourself better. In fact, you've heard it in the testimonies this morning. And then we want to help you understand God better. It's broken down in 3 terms like this. Number 1 is a theology. Don't be frightened by that word. Theology is just a study of God. Who wouldn't want to study God? And the best way to study God is to get to understand what he's spoken. God has spoken. It's in the Word. So we explore. We want you to understand the great big arch of God's grand redemptive plan from Genesis to Revelation. We can't do a deep dive into every book, but we do on some. And we try to help you understand and to locate yourself in it, because the story ain't finished yet. And you're being written into the story. Someone made in the image and likeness of God. That's the first term. Then the second term, it's more about understanding yourself more. One thing I've learned in my 30 plus years of leadership is the hardest person to lead is me. If I can't lead me, I can't lead you. So it's a lot about self-leadership and understanding ourselves. And then the third term, we get pretty practical on how you can grow in your skills and upskill yourself as a human being. You see, this is the way to flourish. I was reading Psalm 148 this week, and it talks about the mountains and the stars worshiping God. And then it goes on to talk about kings and queens and human beings worshiping God. And I thought about, well, how does a star worship God? Because I don't think stars sing, because we tend to think, as soon as someone says to you worship, you start to think about songs you sing. That's an ugly little, tiny little bit of worship. Worship is not always an emotional response that involves a song. The stars worship God by being a star.
If you enjoyed this video today, why don't you click subscribe and click on that notification bell to get a notification the next time we upload a video. And if you're new or you've been coming to the C3 Church for a little while now, why don't you find out what your next step might be in the journey of faith? Click on the next step link in the description below to find out what your next step in your journey might be.